Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. Listener discretion is advised. It's that time of year, once again, my favorite holiday, Halloween. And it would be a huge missed opportunity to go a whole month of October without a paranormal episode. And today we have that episode. Both of my guests joining me today are paranormal enthusiasts. Barrie Reeder is from the UK, and he is the proprietor of Dimension Devices, a company that manufactures paranormal investigation tools. And Travis Wisotzkey is a paranormal investigator from Council Bluffs, Iowa. Both gentlemen approach their craft with a healthy dose of skepticism, and I am excited to set the tone for the next few weeks as we approach Halloween. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Ladies and gentlemen, you thought I was going to make it through the month of October without doing a paranormal episode. Well, you thought wrong. It is happening today, and joining me from the UK, yes, I intended on rhyming, is my friend Barrie Reeder. He is a paranormal enthusiast and founder of Dimension Devices, and my other friend, Travis Wisotzkey from Council Bluffs, Iowa. He is a paranormal investigator and content creator. Guys, how the heck you doing today?
I'm doing great. Very happy on this nice sunny UK day. And happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
And I'm doing pretty good. The weather's perfect.
It's finally that fall season. We've been like in the Midwest, the United States. I think summer overextended her stay a little bit.
Oh, yeah. It was like 90 degrees for too long. It was, yeah.
Yeah. Without any further ado, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Barrie. I'm the founder of Dimension Devices. We've been creating paranormal equipment for the past coming up 5 months, I think. And I got into this all because of Travis, which we'll go into a bit later, I'm sure. Basically, that's me. Programmer of 25 plus years, working for large corporations, Jeep and Chrysler and Nikon, and some smaller corporations like Travelodge and Jury's Inns. With that, hated the whole office politics. So popped into the paranormal investigation scene. I've got a lifelong passion of paranormal and conspiracies and this, that, and the other. So I'm all over it. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I'm Travis. Lifelong adventurer. I live stream and make YouTube videos, and then that I was into gaming, and that turned into paranormal after all of this stuff. And yeah, so now I build equipment. I build equipment out of like oddities and antiques, and make like REM pods and radios, all that fun stuff. And then I film my paranormal adventures every week. But yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about paranormal experiences and why your interest was peaked in this. Travis, I'm going to go to you first because you spend a lot of time at Malvern Manor in Malvern, Iowa. What was your first paranormal experience and the thing that kind of kicked off your interest in the paranormal?
Well, I've always been into like urbex, like urban exploring. So I've had a long past of that, and just weird things happening while doing that sort of stuff led me into the paranormal world. And then about 2 years ago, I just dove headfirst into it. And I went out to Malvern with my wife, and we had some weird stuff happen. And at the time I was live streaming, so I decided to switch from gaming to paranormal, and then it's taken off from there. But I've had some weird stuff in my life happen. From back in the day, I saw a woman basically materialize through a fence into an abandoned building. We chased her down to see, like who she was, and we couldn't find her. It was at nighttime. There was no, she didn't have a flashlight or anything like that. So it was a little weird, but yeah. And then after that, it just it took off and blossomed from there.
How about you, Barrie? What piqued your interest in the paranormal?
Where to begin? Probably going back to, like, I don't know what you call it in the US, but we have primary school, which is like from the ages of like 4 until 11, I think, or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was a book a nice simple book that had lots of big pictures, big pictures of the Newby Abbey monk ghost, which I'm sure you've seen. It's just a very famous picture of a big semi see-through monk. That piqued my interest. That then got me into other books, which led towards aliens and conspiracies, but still in the realm of ghosts and paranormal. The X-Files, which is everyone's first intro to TV paranormal stuff. And then there was also a little spin-off show called Millennium, and both of those things just kind of solidified my interest in paranormal. And then from there, I've constantly kept a part of my brain in the paranormal, no matter what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, in terms of experiences, I've had a few. I remain healthily skeptical. So when things happen, I tend to try and debunk them, as I know Travis does. It's debunking before anything first. And as of yet, I haven't had anything too crazy happen, but I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later on.
I love the fact that all three of us kind of exist on a similar plane. We talked about this before I started recording, how we all just dwell in possibility with a healthy dose of skepticism, because nothing is certain in this world, and you don't know until... I have two rules of thumb. One is I don't talk politics on my show, and two, I don't talk religion on my show, because the last thing that I want to do is divide audiences based on some sort of sensationalism. And, you know, kind of that fuels the topic of sensationalism, because if you're a fan of pro wrestling at all, it's called cheap heat. You know, I could talk politics and get more clicks, or I could talk religion and get more clicks. But is that meaningful? So kind of applying that to the spiritual realm, this realm of the paranormal, the realm of the unknown, we don't want to get cheap heat. We want to be legitimized. We want to be viewed with a sense of integrity. And I have a feeling you guys exist in that same parameter. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So you both do work on paranormal investigation devices. Travis, I want to talk to you about this because Barrie said he got into it through your influence. Let's talk about some of the devices that you manufacture and what their purpose is and what they actually do.
Main things right now, I build REM pods. So REM pod is a device that it makes an electromagnetic field around it. And then if anything that has resistance, basically like your skin or energy gets close to it, it'll sound off a little like jingle or alarm, and then light up with LEDs and kind of give you a sense of how close that thing is to it. And then I also build radios, like a ghost box, so a scanning radio. A lot of people are familiar with like the SB7, which does like a linear scan. And the ones I make do we call like a tri scan. So it jumps around the stations and it's not linear. So it kind of negates that. If you're like going down a radio station, it kind of trails off. It negates that. So you kind of get more random words, I guess. Yeah. But a lot of my devices too, I use oddities and different antiques as trigger objects. So a really popular item I make right now is a cigarette REM pod. So it's basically just a pack of cigarettes as a REM pod. And I do that to kind of just make them like trigger objects. So people, like if a spirit sees it, it's not going to be like, oh, that's a weird device I've never seen. It's like, no, that's a cigarette pack. Okay. So I do a lot of stuff like that. And then I'm working with like Barrie to make other things like a shadow detector. I'm working on a pair of goggles. They're kind of like the Delco goggles or the Estes method, but it'll make it have different lenses and just do different fun things. But I do like the hardware stuff.
I find that really interesting that you use antiquities and devices that could kind of be trigger devices, maybe like the pack of cigarettes you're talking about. Maybe a spirit sees that pack of cigarettes and they were a smoker in their past life. What's been your experience with the effectiveness of the devices that you manufacture?
Yeah, like the cigarette pack. I got that idea from John Huntington and then another person when we went to the Squirrel Cage jail. We figured, that the inmates used to smoke a lot, so that makes sense. But I don't really have a lot of experience with like the other equipment that people make because I basically started doing this because I didn't want to like pay all the prices.
Right.
But and I'm just good with building stuff. Yeah. So I mean, but yeah, it seems to have an effect. Like I don't know. I think some of my equipment goes off when others don't. Like Josh Hurd at Malvern uses a lot of my stuff, and he loves it. He seems to think that it gets more interactions just because it's a trigger object. It's something that's they're familiar with.
Excellent. So, Barry, how did you connect with Travis and get into the realm of manufacturing these devices yourself? And let's talk a little bit about the devices that you're manufacturing.
Yeah, so long story short is I tuned in. I was playing a PC game called Project Zomboid and searching. I thought, oh, yeah, this would be cool. Let's go and see whether anyone else is playing Project Zomboid. So searched YouTube. Travis came up under his Net Echo YouTube channel. And tuned into him, started watching him play Project Zomboid, chatted to him for a bit. I can't remember exactly how I found out he did paranormal investigations. Travis, do you remember?
I think I did that first Malvern Manor stream. Like I did a Malvern Manor, and yeah, and I remember you were helping me out with the EVPs and stuff, and then yeah, it just
yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, so he was doing EVP sessions in Malvern Manor, and I was clearing them up in post processing and posting back things that I heard that he didn't hear at the time back into his Discord channel. So it became a sort of an interest of mine just to do like sort of background post-processing on his investigations. And we started talking about devices and things like that. And he brought up a device called the Ovilus, which I had never heard of before. And for those not aware, the Ovilus is basically an environmental sensor, which I believe uses EMF, an EMF sensor, and based on something secretive in the Ovilus, it will then transform any environmental readings into words that appear on the screen and actually spoken aloud. And I looked into it and saw that they were selling for horrendous prices. And I think I said to Travis at the time, it's daylight robbery. We can do this cheaper. And that's basically where it all stemmed from. And since then, it's just grown exponentially. So I created a little device. It's the size of a smartwatch called Chattergeist Touch. And it does, I think we're on something like 8 times the functionality of Ovilus. So rather than just words, it also does phonetic sounds or phonetics, drawing mode, an 8-ball, like a spirit-based magic 8-ball mode, and also a Ouija board and a couple of other modes as well. So that's kind of how I got into building it. I've got a background in programming, as I said. And as I said, I got fed up with doing the whole corporate slog through the career ladder. So figured it would be a good idea to try my hand to electronics, which I'd done as a hobbyist for a little while. And just kind of pulled all my electronics out of retirement and started doing some soldering and breadboarding and came up with what was basically Chattergeist version 0.1, which was a bunch of wires stuck in a breadboard with an old Nokia screen attached. And I think it had a humidity sensor on it, and I think it was a light sensor or something like that on it as well. And it's just grown from there. And now it measures EMF, temperature, and radio frequency noise in your local environment and detects fluctuations. And when a fluctuation is found, it displays results depending on the mode in which you've got enabled in Chattergeist. And we've got an exciting future, hopefully.
That's amazing. So, working with these devices for the both of you and kind of turning that paranormal investigation into more of a scientific investigation instead of a shaky camera and a bunch of people yelling, "Did you hear that?" How has that changed your belief structure and what you believe in as far as things being ghosts or being multidimensional beings, or maybe even as far as extraterrestrials? How has your belief system changed since you have been working with a scientific device approach?
I've always been a scientist, basically. I've always been into like physics and biology, all that stuff. A lot of my family are scientists and doctors, so I've basically grown up with that. but then on that same approach, I'm also my wife and I are into Wicca and paganism type stuff. Me not so much as much anymore. I'm more of a scientist, but my wife is super skeptical though when it comes to paranormal. So I dove into this originally just to get our answers, to ask questions, to figure out things. And over the past couple years that I've been building equipment, it seems that things happen more and more, but they're not like sensationalized, like, oh, it's a demon and it's gonna eat my soul. It's more just little blips here and there, and it's like my belief is it's energy, right? So when energy can't be destroyed type of deal. So when you die or whatever happens, or residual energy happens, that leaves a mark, or that stays in this world, and we're picking up on that type of deal. And then yeah, like the interdimensional thing. I completely subscribe to like aliens. I don't think most alien encounters I don't think are from other planets. I think they're interdimensional. I think they're coming from another dimension. That goes into like string theory and all that fun stuff where there's different dimensions. Yeah. Like if you do an action, then another version of you does a different action, and it's just strings out from there type of deal. And I think that comes into play, and combine that with the energy, then it's just a whole mess of fun things we don't understand, but I'm out to get answers and to figure out.
For sure. So how about you, Barry? What's your take on things since you've been doing these devices?
So let's use an X-Files analogy for me, I think. I always consider myself a bit of a molder. It's like I believe, staunchly believe, and I want to believe, and I believe these things are happening. But as I've got older and as I've looked into it more and more, I consider myself more of a Scully. Mm-hmm. I'm much more the sort of, did that really happen? Did it really happen? Or maybe not quite as bad as Scully, because when aliens poke her in the face, she still doesn't believe it's aliens. But that's another story. So yeah, I mean, I also err on the side of science. I would say slightly different to Travis. I kind of believe that all time happens all the time. That's kind of my sort of basis of belief at the moment. And the things people are seeing as ghosts and spirits could very well just be time echoes or residual echoes of existing within certain places. There's a doctor, I think he was a Japanese doctor called Dr. Emoto, who did a bunch of experiments with water and how water can retain memory based on emotion and intent. So if you do, there's a very famous rice experiment. So if you take 3 bowls of rice, and in each day in the morning, you walk past the bowls of rice, and to the first bowl of rice, you say, I love you, you're wonderful, you taste lovely, and I can't wait to eat you. The next bowl of rice you ignore. And then the third bowl of rice, you tell it it's horrible, it's a dick, you're a prick, I fucking hate you. And then over time, you'll find that the bowl that you spouted hatred at actually molds faster. And loving intent tends to mold a lot in like a longer amount of time it takes for it to actually turn into a moldy rice. And I believe the same is true with buildings and ground and soil and trees, because there's water and everything basically. So why would a building that existed in the 1700s not house the same sort of memory and intent that was there from 300 years ago now? And I think that can be tapped into. But again, erring on the side of the non-sensationalist side, I'm glad Travis brought up demons, because this is a very big thing in the paranormal community at the moment. Demons everywhere. I'm being possessed every 5 seconds. Everywhere I go, I'm being possessed. I'm being attacked. I've got scratches everywhere. And that's not what this is about at all. It should be a legitimate enterprise for people to do legitimate investigation and pull up actual facts and evidence. And gradually it's becoming more and more like the, I don't know whether you're familiar with the UK show Most Haunted.
Yes.
So loads of people loved Most Haunted, but there was some footage that was released many years ago now of Derek Acora, who was the lead medium. And you can't see me there on the podcast, but I'm doing air quotes under medium. And that's the footage was released, and he was saying behind the scenes that it's all bullshit, and we're basically lying to the audience, and that just kind of went under the radar. And I think a lot of paranormal investigations, small YouTube channels, Instagram channels, Twitter, even a lot of TV is just over sensationalizing because, being frank, sensationalism gets views. It makes you money. It's a bit like sex sales. It's the same sort of thing, unfortunately. And breaking away from that is a hard thing to do. But I think with more people doing legitimate investigations like Travis, he doesn't sensationalize, he just shows. He just does the things that he does, and you can infer your own meaning. I think that's superbly important. And watching Travis's live stream, as I've done many for a long time, there's stuff going on there that I cannot explain, as I'm sure he would agree. Then, like I've seen shadows moving. We've caught EVPs, or he's caught EVPs, and it's just mental. And I've caught a few EVPs myself outside of the internet, where I've been doing my own little investigations that I cannot explain. And we've had some results, again, going back to the device I created, Chattergeist, which we just can't explain. And I think it's very important to have that sort of scientific basis. We're not just pulling ethereal information and saying, right, this communication from this device is coming from the Akashic record, which no one can prove that. But if you can prove using repeatable results that things are happening, then that is legitimate. And as far as Travis's REM pods with his cigarette pods, or whatever you want to call them, that's great. It's basically like a theremin, essentially. So the closer something gets, the more sound it makes, or the different sound it makes. And that's repeatable. And the same goes with Chattergeist as well, with the same fluctuations in EMF or temperature around you. You're going to get the same results. Get repeated words or repeated pictures. And I think that's very legitimizing, if that's a word.
Yes. And listening to both of you talk about this, one thing that keeps coming back in my head is science is about proving or disproving a theory, right? And the theory of an afterlife or a spiritual world or multi-dimensionalism, anything along those lines, those have existed for a long time. And you would think that if it wasn't completely true, it would have been disproven by now. There have been scientists that have gone to great lengths to disprove these things. One thing that I think about frequently is how science fiction used to mimic science, and now it feels like science is mimicking science fiction more frequently. You think about the Marvel movies. Right now, they're in this whole multiverse saga, right? And what has been a very strong theory post 2012? It's the Mandela effect. What happened when the Large Hadron Collider got turned on? Are you guys familiar with all of this, the CERN device and all of that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Good. We can talk about this because that is something that I'm actually terrified by. I don't believe that the world ended in 2012, but I do feel like something happened in 2012 that impacted the energy all around us, and that the world has been different since the Large Hadron Collider has been turned on. What are your guys' theories on that?
So very quickly, just to interject here, I think it was it a Google D-Wave engineer? It was an interview with, I can't remember whether he was with CERN or whether he was a Google D-Wave quantum computer engineer. But there was an interview of him saying that what they're basically doing when you send a calculation to these quantum computers, say the calculation is something simple, like 1 + 1 = 2. When you send that to one of these quantum computers, what it doesn't do is say, right, I've got one, right, I've got another one, I'll add them together, your answer is 2. What it actually does is it says, right, I've got this one and I've got this one. I will cycle through parallel dimensions until I find the answer that is correct and return that to you. And don't ask me to explain that. I can't explain that. That's far beyond my knowledge. But that's what I believe it was Google D-Wave engineer said. And that comes straight from the horse's mouth of the people that built quantum computers, that they're basically cycling parallel universes. And if that doesn't instill fear in people, they're not listening properly.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are your thoughts on the Large Hadron Collider? Do you feel that there's some sort of correlation between an upswing in paranormal events and, UFO sightings or anything along those lines and the Hadron Collider being activated?
It might be. I mean, a lot of things have happened with like the Hadron Collider, like Barrie was talking AI and quantum computers, stuff like that. I think they might be tapping into something and just amplifying it. Because I've seen, my wife and I were talking about like in the past 2 years or so, with like the wars going on and all this other things happening, like the energy on the planet is just kind of amping up. And we've noticed just talking to other people, like in the witch community or in the paranormal community, that odd things are happening more and more than it seems like they've ever happened before. So I think a lot of things like that, like the Hadron and just all this stuff, is kind of just amping up the energy, I guess. And yeah, so I can see something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I would say most possibly rather than most probably. Most possibly that is a thing. But again, I'm going to err on the side of skeptic, just to play devil's advocate. I would say that we are living in a time where information is easily disseminated and easily transferred to other people. Never before have we lived in a time where something can happen in Geneva with the Large Hadron Collider, and we can find out about it within 2 minutes in the US or in the UK. So I think that has to play a part when it comes to strange things are happening. Maybe these things have always been happening, but we've just never had the means in which to get that information to us so quickly before. Like we're no longer playing word of mouth games, and we're no longer playing mass media communication through TV and radio, where we've got the digital world of information at our fingertips. And I think that also plays a part to a certain extent, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Oh no, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I fear that since 2020's happened, since we're in the post-pandemic world, that society is becoming more and more like a science fiction movie because of the energy shifts that are going on all around us. We have political discord, we have social discord, we have spiritual, we have scientific discord now. That influence has to influence something going on around you. I mean, I know I don't feel as good when I wake up in the morning as I did 4 years ago. You know, does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I've always put that down to the fact that I'm getting old. But yeah, I mean, it very well could be just like there's a project online called the Global Consciousness Project. Are you aware of this?
No, please share.
Okay. So there's, I think it's Princeton. There's a bunch of Princeton. I don't know whether, I think some of them are students and some of them are tutors. And they've set up the Global Consciousness Project, which you can search online if you go to Princeton's website, princeton.edu, I think it is. And they have something called the Global Consciousness Project dot. And it's a dot that displays colors from, I think it's light blue to dark red. And it's based upon what they call eggs. And I can't remember what egg stands for, but it's basically a random number generator. And they're all over the world. There's some in Russia, some in China, some in the UK, some in the US. They're all over the world. And they measure these. And I think they mostly they're true random number generators. So they draw things from like Geiger counter fluctuations or like soil samples and stuff. And then they gain random numbers from that. But there was a huge spike in what they call global consciousness, which I think is the same sort of thing as the Akashic record, whereby I think it was on the morning of 9/11, when the plane hit the World Trade Center. I think the first plane hit the World Trade Center. There was a huge spike in the Global Consciousness project, and they couldn't explain it. So they put it down to the fact that information was put out through the media, the public drew it in, and it caused a mass, not a panic, but a mass concern. And that caused a spike in the Global Consciousness Project. So I think intent and emotion can be spread. Well, I mean, like right now, I could make you sad, I can make you happy by saying certain things. But when people spread certain ideas, that has an effect on your emotions, an effect on your intent. And the intent in which they say that to you or they spread that to you can also have an effect on you. And I think when you're doing that en masse, it can affect, I don't know what you call it. I guess you would call it global consciousness. It would have an effect on global consciousness. So having something like CERN switch on, cycle parallel universes, smash atoms, could very well be having a similar effect. The only thing lacking there would be intent, I guess. But yeah, I haven't really put two and two together. It was just an interesting parallel to draw.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's localize things. Unfortunately for Barrie, he is not in the place where he can experience this. Maybe someday.
Oh.
Maybe someday he'll be in the Midwest of the United States.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But Travis, what is it about our portion of the United States, in our area in particular, where paranormal experiences are becoming more and more frequent? You talk about just the anomalies within an hour drive of where we live. We have Ball Cemetery, we have Hummel Park, we have Villisca Axe Murder House, we've got Malvern Manor. There's a couple other places that I'm not even naming, 4 or 5 other places. What do you think it is about our portion of the United States where we have more activity?
Well, I think it's what is it, the 40 or the 35th parallel or whatever, the line that goes through the U.S. You'll get a lot of stuff from like the Appalachian Mountains, that stuff happens on that line, and it's just south of us. But I think, I don't know, like around here, I think we have a lot of like amplified stuff, I guess you would say, partly because of that. But then I think also, like, I travel around Iowa, like to the smaller towns, and there's a lot of stuff that people just don't talk about because it's kind of like they're Iowa farmers. They don't want to,
right,
spread that around and have, yeah. So I think a little bit of that, it happens too, so that these places kind of just stay hidden. But like when it comes to like Malvern or Villisca, yeah, like you said, Ball Cemetery, places like that, I don't know. I think they're just concentrated, right? In a way. We're not like a big city. We don't have, stuff all over. So when something happens that's paranormal, like, it just kind of concentrates itself in a way. I don't know how to explain it better, but yeah. And then we have a lot of history here in the Midwest. I mean, you have the East Coast, the West Coast, but Omaha, like this general area was like the gateway. It was a funnel from people going from west to east, or east to west, or vice versa. So I think we have a lot of just that energy, that history here that is kind of concentrating things also.
So there's a great podcast, if you get a chance. I always do this on my show. I promote other podcasts because that's how we build a community, right? There's an Unsolved Mysteries podcast where they talk about Ball Cemetery. And that is probably the one and only paranormal investigation I've ever been on in my life, was just taking a midnight drive out to Ball Cemetery, listening to old Art Bell's Coast to Coast on the way out there. and just kind of getting that experience, leaning back to influenceable energy, like Barrie was talking about in the Rice experiment. One of the threats of going out to Ball Cemetery has always been the keeper of the land shooting rock salt at people that would visit Ball Cemetery. So it kind of makes you wonder if people already having a pre-existing state of fear amplifies the amount of activity that occurs at Ball Cemetery. Have you gone and investigated that at all, Travis?
I haven't been to Ball Cemetery under investigative terms, but I have been there. But yeah, that I find that a lot. Like, if you go into a place already scared, then things are going to happen. So I try and like limit that in a way. One prime example, I bought a Dybbuk box. I bought a Dybbuk box from France. It was only $35. I didn't buy one of the $200 ones. And I basically got it because of the Newkirks. The Newkirks, they had a Dybbuk box, and they have a theory that the Dybbuk box is only evil because of intent. So people come and see it, and they're like, "Oh, that's an evil box." So that the box kind of grabs that energy, and that it becomes an evil box. So we've been trying to take the Dybbuk box and just give it kind of like the Rice experiment. Just kind of say, you're not scary. We love you, stuff like that. And I haven't had anything weird happen with it. So it could be not a real Dybbuk box, or it could be that effect. But I think that happens in haunted places too. If you go into a place and you're like, oh, someone's going to shoot me with rock salt, or, Bloody Mary's going to get me, or whatever else, then that kind of, it'll feed off of it. And especially if you go with more, that's one reason I do solo a lot too, because I don't want other people's energy to affect everybody, type of deal.
I think that's very important as well to I think a lot of there's so many paranormal groups, they all go out all at the same time, think, be it intent, be it emotions, be it results, things that are easily muddled. I think having a smaller group or in just one individual almost lends credence to the evidence which you're collecting for that reason. And it's funny, actually, you should mention that the Midwest has a lot more paranormal activity than other places in the US, because that's something that we've noted here as well. Specifically with Chattergeist, most of our orders come from the US. So we ship a lot of orders all over the US and Canada, and the majority of orders come from the Midwest. We've got no idea why. We just assume there's just more ghost hunters out there. But you speaking about more paranormal activity happening out there, put two and two together. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting.
So it's that time of year. It's spooky season. It is Halloween. It is my most favorite holiday. I act like Clark Griswold and I go overboard and I decorate my house for Halloween. I decorate my house for Christmas. But Halloween is my personal favorite. So it feels like investigations and interest in investigations seem to tick up a little bit more this time of year. Through your experience now as a business owner and somebody that's manufacturing devices, Barrie, and for you as an investigator yourself, Travis, what do you guys notice about this time of year? Is it just something that we're manifesting because we know it's spooky season, or is there an uptick in paranormal activity this time of year?
From my point of view, I would say it's partially that we're aware that it's this time of year, but I would also say that a lot of that feeling and that edginess, that want to explore the paranormal, comes from the feeling of that time of year. It's fall, as you call it. We call it autumn here, but it's fall. So you're going to have that feeling. Things start to get darker earlier in the evenings, and the leaves are falling. Everything feels a little bit more gloomier. You get that sort of Halloween feeling without even knowing it's Halloween. You've got that feeling around you, and I think that kind of spurns people on a little bit to go out more and do more investigation. But I think it's also kind of like, it's a thing, isn't it? It's an event. If let's say you've got a local paranormal group down the road, and they do investigations all year round. Comes to October, and they're like getting an influx of customers because so many customers are like, right, it's spooky season. Let's go do something spooky. So I think that definitely plays into it a little bit. But I think the majority of those things, isn't there? And Travis will know better than I, because I'm not keyed into Wicca and stuff. But I think there is something around October to do with Wicca and things like that, right?
Oh yeah. Basically, the Halloween is based off of the old pagan holiday Samhain. So,
that's right.
Yeah, it's older than like Christmas or anything like that. So yeah, it's been around. I think it's been in the consciousness too. Just that this is spooky season.
Yeah, I think that's another thing actually. Bringing up consciousness, and I'm of a firm belief that things are passed down genetically, and it doesn't have to be male pattern baldness, and it doesn't have to be freckles. It can be something like past experiences that your granddad had can also be passed down. And I think that's another thing, that our ancestors were celebrating pagan holidays hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and who's not to say that those things are instilled in us deep inside our DNA somewhere, and they bubble up to the surface around this time of year. I think, yeah, that must also have some sort of influence.
For sure. For sure. Wow, this has been a lot of fun to talk about. I ask every single one of my guests, because it's an out-of-pocket question, this is a closing question, because ultimately, no matter if you're investigating spirits or you're manufacturing devices, it all boils down to the human experience. You know, how we experience things day by day. Given everything that's gone on in the world the past 3 to 4 years and where things are at today, I'm going to give you each a chance to answer this question. But what's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than the way it is today? Barrie, you go first.
Okay, right. So it's going to be slightly cliched. This is what I genuinely think. You ever seen Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Yes.
I think we should all be excellent to each other and party on. It is that simple. You can drill down into it, and you can say, oh yeah, well, you need to be nice to your neighbor. You need to give money to the poor. You need to do this, that, and the other. But essentially, all you need to do is be excellent to each other. That's all you've got to do. And the problem with, I guess, the biggest problem with that is, without getting too deep into politics, is that those who govern us don't want to be excellent to each other. They've got no interest in that. They've got interest in being excellent to themselves and power over the people. And I think that needs to break for things to get better, unfortunately. But at the same time, that's not going to stop your average listener being nice to anyone else or being excellent to anyone else. That's my general opinion anyway.
It's got to start at the micro level for sure. For sure. Travis,
exactly.
How about yourself, my friend?
Oh, I totally agree with Barrie there too. And I think like optimism is a big thing. You need to be optimistic. You got to fake it kind of to make it, because the more you do, the more it spreads, right? And like on the same thing, don't worry about what our overlords are doing or whoever's up top. You worry about your own family, your own community. And I think you just be a lot happier. Turn off the news, right?
Turn off the news.
Yeah.
If you take nothing else away from this, turn off the news, people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like that movie. I forget what it's called, but the old guy is just like, yeah. But yeah, so just be optimistic. Just get day by day, and if you need to, and just kind of concentrate on your inner town, your inner space, and you'll just feel a lot better. And in turn, if you better, you'll be happier towards everybody else, and it'll spread.
Excellent. That is brilliant advice.
Turn off the news, go shake hands with your neighbor, and generate the energy that you want to discover. Guys, where can people find you online? Barrie, you go first.
So you can find us at dimensiondevices.co.uk. We're UK based, but we're all over the world. We're all over social media. Just search for Dimension Devices. You'll find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're not using TikTok. People who are on TikTok, read the TikTok terms and conditions. We're everywhere else.
Travis.
Oh yeah, I do videos and streaming under NetEcho. You can find me on YouTube or Facebook, and then Instagram, all that stuff. And then my shop for selling equipment is Wisotzkey Paranormal. You can find me on Facebook or Etsy under that. But yeah, I make videos weekly, and yeah.
Awesome. Guys, thank you very much for doing the podcast. This was a fun conversation. I hope we can connect again in the future. The world is a much better place with you guys in it.
Well, we appreciate it, no doubt.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Once again, I want to thank my friends Barrie and Travis for doing the show today. You can find Barrie online by searching out Dimension Devices on social media, and you can find Travis by searching out Net Echo on social media. He also has a company called Wisotzkey Paranormal that you can find online. Both of the gentlemen will be tagged on the picture on Instagram if you want more information. And while you are being generous with the follows, make sure you are following Caught on the Mic on all forms of social media. Every episode is also now available on YouTube. That is a new update as of this week. So if you want to share episodes, real easy to share through social media. Visit my website, www.caughtonthemic.com. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.